Okay. I'm gonna need a drink for this one, alright? We'll do the Jack video, but I need a freaking drink, alright? So let me just see what we got down here. The Tekking101 bar. My room is pretty small, so I had to install the bar under my bed. You know how it goes. Alright, we got, Fireball whiskey, from that Whiskey Peak video I did a couple weeks back. Not strong enough. Not strong enough for this. We need... Oh, okay, there we go. Oh, yeah. 1% milk. Yep. Maybe someday I'll have a video that I need to bust out the whole milk for, but for right now, 1%, man. Yeah! Okay, that's strong. Alright, so here's the dealio. Usually when I talk about Jack, Jack is kind of the butt of my jokes on the channel, okay? I'll be like, well, you know, whenever it's like, oh yeah, Ashura Doji, he looks pretty strong, but his only real feat so far is he sliced Jack. I mean, come on, right? And I mean, look, I've known a lot of famous Jacks from fiction, alright? So Jack here has a lot of stuff to live up to. He's got to live up to Samurai Jack, Captain Jack, Jack Burton, Jack Bauer, just Jacks themselves, like the game. Yeah, you laugh now until you freaking step on one of those things. It's like Usopp's Caltrop Hell. You stay away! So yeah, Jack himself, he's kind of like, you know... Literally, it goes Jack, Queen, King. Jack is on the bottom of the calamities, and he has his big brothers, Queen and King, that kind of, you know, talk smack to him and everything, you know, like Jack the drag down, and Jack is very shy when it comes to his older brothers. He's just like, oh, okay, whatever, that's just how it goes. You know, like when he was being chewed out by Queen and King, you know, Jack didn't even really try to, like, talk back or anything. Like, you don't tell me you don't tell me I'm the drag down queen, I'll beat you up! You know, he was just sitting on the ground just like, yes, okay, big bro, okay, alright, I'm sorry, big bro, I'll do better next time, big bro. Alright, so that's Jack, okay? But every time I talk smack about Jack, I always hear a bunch of people in the comments section like, Mal, Tekking, you know, Jack is actually pretty strong. I mean, yeah, I mean, Queen and King might be stronger, and Kaido is certainly stronger, but, you know, he's had some impressive feats. Oh, yeah, impressive feats, okay. Hey, remember that time that Jack decided that he was strong enough to take on Admiral Fujitora, Sengoku, and Osuru trying to get back Doflamingo? Now, you could say, arguably, you could say, well, that just proved that he had a lot of confidence. He was brave. He had mighty mammoth balls that he attacked the ship. I choose to look at that and be like, yeah, that was kind of a stupid move. Granted, maybe he didn't know all those heavy hitters were on board said vessel, but if he did know, if he actually knew that there was a fleet of marine ships that were transferring Doflamingo to Impel Down, and if he knew that Fujitora, a current admiral, Osuru, a vice admiral that has been in the Marines for decades, on the same, you know, as long as Garp and Sengoku have, and then the former fleet admiral, Buddha Sengoku, was on that ship, I'm sorry, Jack's kind of an idiot. That's my opinion on that. But, okay. Turns out Jack has actually had some pretty impressive moments in the story, alright? So we're gonna be looking at that today. You know what? I can honestly see Oda going down the road with this, where it's like he's setting it up like, okay, Jack is gonna be the weakest of the All-Stars. He's the weakest of the Calamities, right? But then it's Oda, so he could always spin this around, and so it's like Jack going up against the Minks, and maybe the Minks are all gonna go Sulong, and it looks like at first, like Jack has no chance. You know, like Inuarashi, Nekomamushi, and maybe not even getting them involved, because, you know, they're part of the Scabbards, but if you just get like Wanda, BB, Rhodey, Carrot, you get all those Minks together, and they all go Sulong amongst the mighty full moon that is basking Onigashima in the night, and they all go Sulong, and they just start jumping on Jack, and they start scratching the hell out of him. He turns into a mammoth, like, he's like thrashing around, but it's like there's just too many Minks. They're all in Sulong. They're all using God mode, freaking Raiden Electro, like, ha! But then Jack does something. He pulls another ability out of his butt that we didn't know he had. You know, sorry to make you think about Jack's butt there, but then he's just like, I have to activate my hidden power. And then it turns out like Jack might even be stronger than Queen or King. Who knows? Like, Oda could always spin it, because we always look at Jack and it's like, alright, just going by rank and bounty, He's, you know, he's like the lowest tier of the high tier, so to speak, of the Beast crew, okay? So let's go over this. All right, so Jack attacks Zoe. All right, he attacks Zoe with Sheepshed and Jean Rummy. They were both headliners. They attack Zoe. The Minks seem to be able to hold them back even without Sulong. Remember when Jack invaded Zoe, it was not a full moon. He invaded that place for 5 straight days. They waged battle on Zoe, on top of Zunisha, and none of the Minks could go Sulong. And even so, they were able to push back the gifters and the headliners. It was Jack himself that posed such a problem that only Inuarashi and Nekomamushi could fight against him, alright? So, right out of the gate, that's a pretty impressive feat. I gotta give it to Jack. You know, no joking around or anything like that. Inuarashi and Nekomamushi, former members of the Scabbards, well, current members of the Scabbards, but at the point, former members, because the Scabbards were dissolved at that moment. But, you know, wicked strong fighters. They're both 40 years old, so they're kind of in, like, their prime when we're talking, like, One Piece characters, you know? Probably, like, in their 40s. That's when, like, you're the strongest. Like, look at Garp. They both have mastered Electro pretty much. They didn't have Sulong, but they had their unique fighting styles and all that stuff, and they were able to hold off Jack for 5 days straight. Now, that's definitely a feat for Inu and Neko, but also, you gotta look at it, Jack got the short end of the stick here, definitely, because the way that it was set up on Zoe, you know, Inuarashi is the Duke of the Day, Nekomamushi is the Duke of the Night, or the Ruler of the Night, okay? So basically how they did it is that Inuarashi would fight Jack for like 12 hours straight, you know, just like Electro, boom, boom, Mighty Dog Bone Punch, you know, just beating the crap out of Jack, slamming into him with Electro and everything, and then when the clock hits 6 p.m., click, then freaking Inuarashi and the rest of his musketeers retreat, and then Nekomamushi and his forest guardians emerge, and then he's like, "You're Meow!" And that's when he grabs Jack and does like the suplex and just bashes him into the ground and stuff, and then they fight for 12 hours with the forest guardians handling the gifters and the foot soldiers and the pleasures and everybody like that, while Neko handled Jack. The idea was that Neko and Inu kept, you know, changing shifts so they could rest, heal their wounds and everything like that, but Jack didn't really get rest. So, if we're going with this logic here, Jack therefore had 5 straight days of fighting with no rest whatsoever. That's basically what happened, right? If I'm actually thinking about this, because I don't really see a scenario here where, like, you know, Jack brawls with Inuarashi for 12 hours, and then Neko comes out like, "You're Meow!" It's like, okay, now I'm fighting a giant cat now, alright, fine! And then you freaking 6 o'clock the next morning, 6 o'clock a.m., and Neko retreats, and Inuarashi comes back. I don't see this happening where Jack is like, whoa, hang on a second. I've been fighting you damn minks for the last 24 hours. I need to get my beauty sleep. And Inuarashi is like, "Oh, yeah, sure, it's cool. You know, go take a nap, it's fine." He's like, "Alright, I'll be back to fight you probably around, like, give me like at least a good 5-6 hours. I'll be back around noon to kick your ass, alright." Jack just stomps off and goes to sleep. I don't see that going down. I don't even really I don't think Inuarashi and Neko would have even allowed that. So yeah, if that's not the case of what happened, then the only logical explanation is Jack fought Inu and Neko in shifts for 5 days straight with no rest. Neko and Inu got rest, but Jack did not. And finally, after 5 days, it was pretty much a deadlock in this back and forth. So at this deadlock, Jack just finally gave up, and he was just like, "Alright, I'm done with this. Break out the Koro gas, break out the kill gas that Caesar made, and just spew that everywhere." And then that's how the fight eventually ended up ending, and then Jack had to leave to go after freaking, you know, Doflamingo's convoy. Also, I mean, I still think Jack was very short-sighted there. I mean, look, he got defeated. He sank 2 of the Marine battleships, but he got defeated by Fujitora and Osuru. And I don't even know, I think it was implied in one SBS or a Vivra card or something that Sengoku himself actually didn't participate in the fight. He was there in case they needed him, but I think it was stated at some point, or it was very vague, it was revealed that, like, it was just Fujitora and Suru and the regular Marines that actually handled Jack himself. You know, so I think Jack was definitely, I mean, maybe he has a lot to live up to for his big brothers and Kaido, so he's like, you know, "Oh man, if I don't go after Doflamingo, then I'm gonna get chewed out from freaking Queen and King, and I know I just finished fighting these freaking cat and dog for 5 days straight, but whatever, I gotta go do this." But I don't think it was a smart idea, okay? So he left Zoe, and he got the crap beat out of him there, by Fujitora. At least it was Fujitora and Osuru, I believe. He was still alive. They didn't know if he was dead or not. He was bandaged up and everything, but he wasn't like missing an arm or anything like that. He was bandaged up and he seemed relatively okay. You know, he seemed injured, but overall it didn't look like his life was in danger or anything like that. So then he decides to go back to Zou, and then as soon as they're arriving back at Zou, that's when Momo was there at that point, and Momo uses the power to communicate with Zunisha to like crush Jack, send off Jack's forces, crush them, and then Zunisha's like, oh, and then Jack gets obliterated there. So, yeah, and then he sinks to the bottom of the ocean. We find out in one of the last Fever cards that he is actually a giant groper fishman. So he's a full-bred fishman. He's not a half fishman like a lot of people originally assumed, including myself, just because he doesn't have the webbed hands and everything like that. So I'm like, oh, he's probably like half fishman, kind of like a Derringer or sort of something like that. But no, he's a full-bred giant groper fishman. So, yeah, he does have the power of the ancient Zozo no Mi, the ancient elephant fruit, so he's a mammoth. So when he's in the water, he can't move. He's paralyzed, but he can still breathe. So I guess that would be the same thing that would happen to, like, Vanderdecken. If Vanderdecken ever ended up in the water, you know, Vanderdecken couldn't move his body, but he could still breathe. Like, I don't think that ever happened with him, but yeah. So, fishmen having devil fruits, for fishmen and merfolk having devil fruits, at first it seems like that would be a massive disadvantage, and it is. It really is. But it's at least it gives you coverage in that one department, where if you get knocked in the water, if you're a regular human, if you're a devil fruit user and you get knocked in the water, and no one's around to save you, if you just drop in the ocean, you don't get pulled out of there by a third party, you're dead. Okay, at least if you're a fishman or a merman or something and you eat a devil fruit, yeah, one of your strongest traits of being a fishman or a merman and being able to swim, that's basically taken away from you. But if you do get knocked in the water, at least you can still breathe. Now, I would imagine if you're underwater for long enough, you would die of, you know, starvation because you can't move, you can't eat anything. Maybe if you're, like, I don't know, like you're like a sponge, you could filter feed or something, but no, you're pretty much dead if you don't get rescued eventually. But in Jack's case, you know, he's a big toughie. He eats his steak, mammoth steak, elephant steak, I think is actually his favorite meal. So anyway, he gets knocked into the ocean and he lands on the bottom of the sea in the wreckage. Can't move, but he could still breathe, and that means he's still alive, which means that his Vivre card would still be active, and you could still follow the Vivre card to find Jack's location. So that's how he got rescued at sea. All of that happened off screen though, so I'm kind of like, with that, but you know, okay, fine, whatever. What else do we get from Jack? Okay, so he fights against Ashura Doji at Bakura Town, or Elkabore Town. He clashes with Ashura Doji. Ashura Doji just kind of jumps up, slices one of Jack's, like, curved tusk blades, whatever that thing is called, slices him in the process, and then the fight essentially continues on for a little bit longer, but gets immediately interrupted by Kaido. Kaido shows up as a dragon, and Jack is visibly terrified by seeing him, and their fight kind of ends right there. But it seemed like Ashura Doji was at least on an even keel with Jack. It at least seemed that much. Okay. So, I'll give it to Jack. And this was something that was already confirmed a couple chapters ago via Ulti and page 1, and we kind of figured this already. If you have ancient zones, particularly dinosaurs, now Jack is not a dinosaur, he's a mammoth, but regardless, pretty sturdy ancient zone he has working with here, a freaking mammoth, okay? Zones are already giving you a boost to your physical stats because you now have the carnal power of an animal inside of you, but going one step beyond that, ancient zones give you even more stamina and endurance, okay? So I'll liken that to Jack being able to stay awake for 5 days straight while in pitch combat for that. Actually, hold on a second. 5 times... Alexa, what's 5 times 24?
5 times 24 is 120.
Yeah, 120. 120 hours straight. So there you go. 120 hours straight of fighting. I liken that to, you know, his personal training, but also having the Ancient Zone Mammoth. I think that would definitely help him out there, too. Here's something I think about Jack that might be possible. What if Jack is an awakened zone? Now, we do not know much about awakened zones, because so far the only awakened zones that we've seen are the demon guards that impel down, like Minotaurus, Mino Zebra, Mino Chihuahua. A couple of videos back, I was talking about how there was no Chihuahua zone, and someone's like, well, It's like, yeah, no, there is a Chihuahua zone, and in fact, it is an awakened Chihuahua zone, so... be terrified of that. But no, so the only time we get to see the ancients, the awakened zones are at Impel Down, and possibly with Chopper. When Chopper goes into his monster point, that might be him using the Rumble Balls to artificially trigger an awakening or something like that. But beyond that, we don't really know naturally how, you know, awakened zones work. Like, for example, Minotaurus at Impel Down. We always saw him in this form, in this hybrid form, okay? Is he just stuck like that forever, or does he choose to always stay in this form? We never saw Minotauros go into his normal human form, none of the demon guards, or into his full cow form for that matter. He was always in the hybrid. So I'm wondering, is he stuck like that because he can't change back, or is he just like that because, well, I'm a demon guard of Impel Down, and maybe Sadie gave him an order, like, you know, Sadie's their master, you know, because she's Sadie, and she's like, yeah, I will forbid you to turn back. You must stay in that hybrid form to be proper guards of Impel Down. So maybe it's something like that. We have yet to see Jack's hybrid form as a mammoth. We see him as a full human, or full fishman, sorry, and then a full mammoth, but we don't see the hybrid, okay? So this is something interesting because I made a video about awakening fruits a couple months back where I talked about how exactly do you awaken? Like, what is the process for awakening a fruit? And one of the theories that I threw out there was it doesn't really involve regular training. It's not like, you know, follow this 10-step, you know, training regimen for like a couple months or a year and then you'll awaken your fruit before you know it. It's nothing that simple, because the way that Dofi and Katakuri talk about it, it's like awakening fruits is something that is very, very rare. Yeah, I know we get a lot more awakenings in movies, like Gil Tesoro wasn't awakened, Douglas Bullet wasn't awakened, we get video games where there's awakened users, I get that, but in terms of the actual just canon of the manga, don't think there's going to be that many awakens out there. So I threw out a theory that maybe one of the critical factors of awakening a fruit, any fruit, Paramecia, Zoan, Logia, doesn't matter, is simply time. The time that you actually have the fruit inside of you, that you have that power. Doflamingo and Katakuri both got their powers when they were little kids, and Katakuri got it when he was like 5, and he's 48 right now. So he had 43 years to work with this fruit. Doflamingo, I think, got it when he's 10, and he's also around 40 right now. So he's had at least around 30 years or more than that to work with, okay? So, yeah, like, maybe that's the critical factor here. So, then you look at the calamities, okay? You look at the All-Stars. Jack, Queen, King. We do not know how old Queen and King are. We know they're older than Jack. Jack is currently 28. But we also know that Jack was a member of the Beast Crew 20 years ago when they burned down Odin Castle, because we see the silhouette of Jack hanging out there. I guess it could have been somebody else, but it looks like it was Jack, so we'll go with that. Now, of course, 20 years ago, Jack would have only been 8 years old, but he's also a fishman, and fishmen can be they're 10 times stronger than humans normally, and Jack might be just naturally stronger as well, and he might have been training. Maybe Kaido picked him up. I don't know what happened with that, but let's just say Jack at age 8 was there, and he was pretty strong. Well, let's say that even though Jack is the youngest out of all of the calamities, he might have actually ended up getting his devil fruit and having it the longest. Let's say Queen and King are both in their 40s right now, but they didn't get their respective ancient zones maybe only like 5-10 years ago. Because during the flashback with Odin, I even went back to check on this, we do get to see Queen and King in silhouette fighting against the Scabbards and Odin when they clashed in the Udon region, okay? We still got to see them. We saw Queen there in silhouette swinging around like a giant club that was like oozing some kind of like, he's Queen the Plague, so probably some kind of poisonous like acid-coated club or mace or something, like swinging it around attacking the Scabbards. And then you also get to see King there fighting against Raizo, and we see fire everywhere because he's King the Wildfire. I really don't think the fact that he can control fire or the fire's on his back, you know, maybe he makes a fire sword, I don't think that has anything to do with the fact he can turn into a Pteranodon. Maybe it's the mythical zone, well, it's not a mythical zone model Rodan, you know, but it is already confirmed to be an ancient zone model Pteranodon, but I think the fire comes from his species, his unique species that we don't even know about yet, alright? He's like that fallen hell demon angel race or whatever, I don't know. But we see King there as well, fighting against Raizo, like raising up his sword, okay? We see them there, but we don't see them using their ancient zone powers, okay? And you also gotta think about this, like, ancient zones are not quite as rare as mythical zones, but they're still not easy to come by. They might be, you know, buried in, like, fossil layers or something, like, way deep down. Maybe that's how you gain access to freaking ancient zones. So, Kaido of the Beast, yeah, Kaido has a bunch of the artificial zones and he's got the ancient zones on his crew, but he probably didn't just find people that have ancient zones at once. I highly doubt it was like, you know, Kaido starts his crew, okay? And let's say Kaido could already turn into a dragon and he's like, I'm gonna make my own crew filled with the strongest zone users in the world. And then he runs into Queen, and he's like, I just happen to have the Brachiosaurus zone. All right, join me. And then he runs into King. I just happen to have the Pteranodon zone. Come with me. I just happen to have the Mammoth zone. Well, hop on board, kid. You know, I highly doubt he, like, ran, like, Queen, King, and Jack all had their ancient zones before Kaido recruited them. Just happened to be that situation, right? Even with Drake, I don't think it was a coincidence. I think that because Drake is a member of SWORD and has connections to the government and the Marines from beforehand, it's possible that SWORD found the ancient zone and held onto it and gave it to Drake with the specific intent of Drake getting the power of an ancient zone so he could be more welcome into Kaido's crew, so he could rise through the ranks, become a Tobiropo, and eventually take him down. I think that was the whole point. Like, the Marines might have found that ancient Allosaur zone years ago, and they're like, all right, we're gonna hang on to this because this is an ancient zone. We couldn't just give this to a random captain or hang on to this. And then when SWORD had the whole plan with, okay, Diaz Drake, you're gonna be the one to use this plan. Take this fruit, defect from the Marines, and then, still a secret operative of SWORD and help us out. I think that's definitely where we're going with that, okay? So let's say that Jack at a young age, maybe he already did have the Mammoth, but Queen and King did not have the Brachiosaur and the Pteranodon, respectively, okay? So that means that Jack might have had his fruit for 20 years, maybe longer, and so he's an awakened. And then Queen and King don't have it for that long, so they're not quite awakened yet. They're strong enough on their own, and overall they might even still be stronger than Jack, but Jack has like an ace up his sleeve. The Jack was actually the ace all along. Okay. So, yeah, let's say when... let's say that even with the demon guards, they could choose to turn off their awakenings or go back into the normal human forms. They were just told not to. They were conditioned by Sadie. Let's just say that. So let's say Jack, he does have his ordinary, normal, hybrid, and transformed, phases of the zone, like every other zone does. But whenever he specifically chooses to, he can be like, all right, I've had enough of this. You, the freaking minks and the Sulong and electrocuting me all day. I'm activating my Mammoth Awakening. And then, like, it's like very specific ability where maybe he becomes similar to the demon guards in appearance. Maybe Jack gets their little tiny eyes and the runny nose. Because that is a little weird that every single awakened zone that we've seen at Impel Down all had the exact same facial expressions, the little beady eyes with the runny noses. So maybe that's just the default for all awakened zones or whatever. Or Oda could always come up with a different design for Jack. It's like, so he activates his awakening and it's like, holy crap. And he's like, and you could have like Jack do a monologue or something where he's rising above all the other. He's like going Monster Point Jack, Monster Point Mammoth, something like that. And he could say something like, my big brothers might have ancient zones too, but and the entire crew other than Master Kaido, I'm the only one that's awakened. Takes out his swords and he's like, let's rock and roll. It's like, okay. And then it might come down to Inuarashi and Neko going Sulong and clashing with Jack directly. Because, a lot of the Sulong minks are going to be targeting Jack specifically for what they did to Zoe. Carrot and Wanda, and they might target Perospero as well when he shows back up, because Perospero is the one that, well, he did and he did not kill Pedro. Because Pedro, that was the whole reason he did that, was because Perospero was there. So Carrot might be like, I'm taking Perospero's head. But you might have a lot of the other, like every other mink, like BB and Rhodey and all the Guardians and Musketeers, they're gonna go after freaking Jack for what he did for Zunisha and everything, attacking their home and quite literally attacking their home, attacking Zunisha, like attacking its legs, so yeah, they're definitely gonna fight against Jack. But I'm just saying, like, Jack, I don't want to say he's being set up as a joke. That's more of just, hyperbole from my perspective. But Oda right now, I think, is definitely trying to show us, like, okay, yeah, Jack is the weakest of the calamities. You got Queen there, you got King there, you got Kaido there, you got even maybe the Toby Ropo. I'm not really sure how they stack up against Jack directly. But I think we might have a thing here where it's like, oh no, Jack's got something special to kind of even the score if he really needs to use it. So that's been this video on Jack. Hashtag Jack Attack. Also, hashtag, what's this called again? Mammoth Boys? I don't even know what that's all about, but apparently I'm supposed to say that as well. All right, have a good one, everybody. I'm going to finish off this milk.